So welcome to this virtual Metro Plan Orlando Technical Advisory Committee meeting. I'd like to call the meeting to order. My name is Lee Pullum and I'll be chairing the meeting today. We also have a team of folks working to ensure this meeting runs smoothly. Today's meeting was advertised on Metro Plan Orlando's website and social media, as well as through targeted emails. Florida's Sunshine Law requires a quorum to be physically present in a room for a government meeting. Due to concerns related to COVID-19, this meeting is being held in a workshop format. Staff will further explain what this means in just a moment. We'll keep microphones muted unless you've been recognized to speak, and we'll use the raised hands features to participate in the discussion. There are 2 public comment points in the meeting. Members of the public who want to speak will use the raise hands feature found in the participants tab. And if attending by phone, you can hit *9 to raise your hand and request to be recognized. When you're called, your microphone will be temporarily unmuted by staff and will ask you to state your name and contact information for the record. We also accepted comments by mail and phone message before the meeting. The guidelines for public comments are posted at metroplanorlando.org/virtual meetings. We want this and all future online meetings to be accessible to all. Participants may join by computer, tablet, or phone. If you need accommodations to participate in the future, please contact Metro Plan Orlando. At this time, I'd like to recognize Keith Caskey of Metro Plan Orlando staff for agenda review.
Okay, well, good morning and Happy New Year, Madam Chairwoman, committee members, and all those attending online. Again, we appreciate you all working with us as we conduct these virtual meetings, and we always appreciate your patience and understanding. As mentioned earlier, due to COVID concerns, this meeting is being held as a virtual workshop in which action items that are being advanced to the Metro Plan Orlando board will be reviewed and discussed, but no formal action will be taken so that a quorum will not be required. And the board's action on these items will be ratified at a future in-person TAC meeting. At this point, we're not sure what the format of our next TAC meeting in February will be, and we'll be sending you more information on that within the next couple of weeks. As the chairwoman mentioned, we'll be using the raise hand features to recognize committee members during the meeting and to call on members of the public during the comment time. If you've joined us on the phone only without the video screen, please use the *6 to mute and unmute your line, and please use *9 to raise your virtual hand so the meeting host can see that you wish to be recognized. You'll see that there's a chat feature on your toolbar. This communicates with all panelists in this meeting, which includes committee members, staff, and presenters. So please only use this if you are having technical issues or need assistance. A full record of the chat comments will be included with the public record of this meeting. Also, I just wanted to welcome our new committee officers for 2022, our chair, Lee Pullum, and vice chair, Bill Wharton. And thank you for being willing to serve, and we look forward to your leadership this year. So, Madam Chairwoman, that completes my announcements. At this point, we'd like to take attendance, and I'll ask Lisa Smith to call the roll for the record. Again, there are no action items, so we will be able to move forward even if there isn't a quorum present.
Good morning. I'll ask all committee members to please go ahead and unmute yourselves now for the roll call, and you can go on mute again after your name is called. Please make sure your video is on if possible so that we can confirm it's you. You will find your unmute and video buttons on the bottom left side of your toolbar on the bottom of your screen. Here or present when your name is called. Abbott Dantuano. Blackadar.
Present.
Castro.
Present.
Bababab.
Here.
Cash.
Here.
Carson.
Present.
Cornelison.
Here.
DeVries.
Here.
Edie.
Present.
El Hassar.
Present.
Friel, Gold, Hardwick,
Here.
Hawthorne, Jacobs,
Here.
Dredge,
Here.
Essel, King, Krug,
Here.
Moskowitz,
Here.
Nastasi,
Here.
O'Keefe,
Here.
Giovinazzo. I know she's having issues with her sound. William,
Here.
Richmond,
Present.
Schmidt, Sonorens,
Present.
Smith,
Present.
Stirk, Sudemeyer,
Here.
Walter,
Present.
Gordon,
Here.
Radzai.
Here.
Madam Chair, that concludes the roll call. Thank you.
Okay, we have 3 presentations listed on today's agenda. Please use the raise hands function to be recognized if you want to ask a question. You may raise your hand during the presentation to indicate that you want to ask a question, but we will hold all questions until the presentation ends. If you're having audio issues, you can type your questions into the chat box and a moderator will relay your questions. Our first presentation will be on the Florida Sunshine Law refresher by Ms. Virginia Whittingham, Metro Plan of Orlando staff. Ms. Whittingham?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and TAC members, thank you so much for allowing the opportunity for me to present this refresher. First of all, I want to say welcome to all of the new members. Some of you I have met and seen before, but others I will get to know you as the year goes on. And also recognize that some of the TSMO members from the previous meeting are joining us as this is a common presentation. Next slide. Each year we come to each of the advisory committees just as a reminder of the Florida Sunshine Laws and that this committee is to be compliant with it. There are 3 basic requirements of us as an organization when we conduct meetings, and that is that meetings must be open to the public. Reasonable notice of those meetings must be given to the public, and I would add that the meetings must be accessible also to the public. And then finally, minutes must be taken of the minutes. Minutes must be taken of the meeting. Next slide. And so just by reference and definition as found in the Florida statute, a meeting is that of a board or commission, and these committee meetings where official actions are to be taken. And although this particular meeting is in a virtual workshop format, you would still be bound by the Sunshine Laws. So who is this applicable to? Next slide. It is applicable to all the Metro Plan Orlando Board and each of its advisory committees are all subject to sunshine. And this includes those task forces and other subcommittees that may come from each of the boards and committees as well. Next slide. So how's this Sunshine Law applied? It is applied to discussions between 2 or more members about any topic that could foreseeably come before this board, this committee, and or the Metro Plan Orlando Board in the foreseeable future. So that means any time that there is a discussion between 2 members, we will would ask that you would let us know if that needs to happen so that we can properly notice it. But it extends to in-person phone calls, emails, text messages, social media, carrier pigeon, conduits between two or more people, smoke signals, anything that could be discussion between two people who are on this committee are subject to that law. The law also requires that conflicts of interest must be declared, and that if there is a conflict that arises, which is applicable to some community or even professional organization activities, there is a gray area there, and we just ask that you let us help you to remain compliant. And what we mean by that is that we had an occasion where two members of a committee were serving on a transportation committee of a civic organization. And they discussed topics that would come before the Metro Plan Orlando board. Now, do we want you to not serve in the community? Absolutely, we want you to exercise your civic duty, but just let us know so that we're able to post those meetings to ensure that you are covered by sunshine laws. And so I am going to stop there and see if there are any questions. There are a million scenarios that could arise, but we just, again, offer ourselves as staff to you, that if there is a question, just reach out to us and we will help navigate. And Madam Chair, that concludes the refresher. If there are any questions, I will be happy to respond.
Okay. Does anyone have questions for Ms. Whittington? If you do, please use the raise hands button and unmute yourself when recognized. I'm not seeing any raised hands.
I would expect that this committee especially would be most knowledgeable, especially with your experience working back home with your boards and commissions. You are very, very familiar with this law. So thank you so much, Madam Chair and members.
Okay, thank you. Our second presentation is a year-end review and confirmation of goals by Nick Lepp of the Metro Plan Orlando staff. Nick?
Good morning. Good morning. Thank you. Next slide, please. So historically, we have had this activity with the board where we have asked them to identify some emphasis areas. We've used these emphasis areas to help with the programming within our project priority list annually. This is all due to our old plan, our 2040 long range plan. Sorry, hold on one second. So our 2040 long range plan didn't go into the multimodal details as, say, this 2045 plan that you just recently adopted last year. So we started this 5 years ago where we would ask the board for some emphasis areas which would help us program in a more multimodal fashion. Next slide, please. But with the adoption of the 2045 plan, we saw that our development of goals and objectives really fell around a lot of those board emphasis areas as we were identifying the performance measures and the targets for health and environment, safety, security, reliability, performance, access, connectivity, and investment in the economy. Those performance measures and the performance-based planning that came out of that 2045 goal process really aligned very well with those emphasis areas. Next slide, please. You can see here, so most of the projects that we're identifying through this performance-based planning really do start getting at those emphasis areas that the board decided 5 years ago. So instead of doing two separate kind of emphasis or priorities, we combined these emphasis areas within the goals for the board to use in their weighted prioritization process. Next slide, please. So how did we do with this? Every year I've come back to the board and shown how we made progress towards meeting those emphasis areas. And this all started back in 2017, where we had about 70% of our TMA funds going towards projects that supported those emphasis areas. Over the years, working with the technical advisory committee through our priority list and still advancing things through the performance-based planning process, we've actually increased that over the years to the point now, and this is also with some stimulus money that has come in over this past year, as we've all known, we're up to 124%. So we are actually getting more projects programmed than our initial allotment, federal allotment that comes in over that 5-year period. So we've been doing very well, not only programming projects, but programming multimodal projects that are supporting trail, safety, and the other emphasis areas. Next slide, please. So we're going to go to the board in February and asked if they want to confirm the process and the weighting of these goal areas as they did last year, with safety and security as one of the highest weighted goal areas, then with access, investment, the reliability, and the health, all having a weighted value and contributing to the performance-based planning, but advancing projects that for safety and security faster with the higher weighting. There's also additional weighting that the board recommended for vulnerable road users, which receives some extra points, and as those projects go through the process to be programmed in the next 5th year. So next slide, please. So that's what we're going to present to the board and ask for them to confirm that they want to continue to use the goals and the weighting process for the performance-based planning approach. Doing pretty well and started moving those multimodal projects forward. So at this time, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay. Does anyone have any questions for Nick? Renzo.
Thank you and good morning. Nick, a quick question for you. On the stimulus funds, you showed a $20 million allocation. Can you tell us what those dollars were utilized for, or what projects?
That came through several of those presentations that we had through October and November as we were looking to program some of those CARES Act funds, and then also as the department came through programming some of those safety projects that came in with the resurfacing. But I can give you the full list of what those additional projects were to the entire committee. I can put that together.
I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Welcome.
Okay. Do we have anyone else who'd like to make a comment or have a question for Nick? Okay, I'm not seeing any, so we will move on to our third presentation, and thank you, Nick. So our third.
There's a question.
Is there?
Yeah.
Let's see. Is there a question? I'm not seeing.
I see it in the chat.
You do?
So I'll
Okay.
get through it. So Aaron, if the board chooses not to use weighted, what is the other option? That's what we will wait and have the discussion with the board in 2 weeks over. I guess the other option would be going back to a neutral weighting, meaning just using the performance-based planning numbers as they are and come out of the prioritization process, or they could choose a different weighting.
Okay, thank you, Nick. Renzo, do you have another question?
Yes, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
So, Mr. Lepp, again, the issue of equity, I'd like to bring up as part of the weighting criteria. So certainly would appreciate some consideration and or discussion on that.
And I will tell you, because that's also come up from a couple of our TAC members, I brought that up with Gary, and he will be discussing that with the board chair and to see where that should fit on the agenda for discussion. So that is on the radar, and we will come back to you and let you know when we can put that on the agendas.
Okay, Laura Hardwick, you have a question?
Yeah, I would just like to add somewhat in line with the equity as one of the prioritization factors, that the real issue, even after we do the prioritization of these projects, is ensuring that the content and the objective, the designs of those projects address those weighted criteria. Seeing projects prioritized because they're on the pedestrian, bicycle, high injury networks for widening would be counterproductive to that ranking. So I just wanted to underscore again that it doesn't stop with the prioritization. begins with the content of those projects to achieve those goals.
And yes, thank you for that. And actually, the way we've structured the prioritization and what was reported, so all of our TMA urbanized area funds are allocated towards complete streets, sidewalk trails, TISMO projects, and transit. So we tend not to have a lot of those conflicts within those funds, but there are still correct widening projects that are out there and that are needed within our system.
Okay, thank you. I saw that Ms. Canellis had raised her hand. Do you have a comment or a question?
Madam Chairwoman, that would be under public comment.
Public comments, okay, that's what I thought. All right. All right, so now we will move on to our third presentation, which is an annual report on Best Foot Forward by Ms. Emily Hanna of the Bike Walk Central Florida.
Good morning, everyone. I know most of you, but for those that don't know me, my name is Emily Hanna. I am the Executive Director of Bike Walk Central Florida. Bike Walk Central Florida is a nonprofit advocacy organization that administers and supports pedestrian and bicycle safety programs within our 3-county region. Next slide, please. So today, what I wanted to do was come back. I presented to this group in this time last year, just on some of the changes we were making to the program. So I wanted to come back and update everyone on the progress of those changes, kind of what worked, what didn't, and what we're hoping and planning for this year. So to start, one of the big news items is we gained new partners into the program last year. We welcomed the town of Oakland and the city of Apopka. And then for 2022, the city of Longwood and Winter Park joined. So we have almost doubled the amount of partners in our program recently. And we're definitely looking forward to that expanded opportunity. Next slide, please. I told you before last year that we were going to try to put all of our data online so that it was accessible to everyone, the public, you guys, and provide that data as well to our partners. I can report we have achieved that goal successfully. So actually, I can plug this website address into the chat as well, so you have access to it. But also, if you have an opportunity, do take a look. We have all of the outreach events, where we go, what comments were made, also where our enforcements are taking place, how many warnings and citations are issued, and of course, the driver yield rates. You can see the changes over time, what's improved, what hasn't throughout the entire program. Next slide, please. And though this is not directly related to the Best Foot Forward program, it is related to Bike Walk and, of course, our reach and ability to help our communities with bike ped needs. And so we launched or worked with the Healthy West Orange District and the Foundation for a Healthier West Orange to launch a trails activation initiative in West Orange County. And so we had to hire staff. And so now we've doubled the amount of people that are really, truly dedicated to bike and pedestrian safety, advocacy, education. So hopefully we'll be able to leverage some of the things we're doing in that program kind of overall in our region. So next slide, please. And here's the region-wide summary. So we conducted 3 high visibility enforcements over the last year, which equated to about 40 details. So that's the number of crosswalks that were enforced by our enforcement partners, which have totaled well over 700 warnings and citations. Because of our enforcements that we have in the community, we garner the media support and usually have them out during our enforcements to highlight the importance of these in the media. And so because of that, we placed on 320 news outlets, both print and in the news, which equated to about $1 million in earned media value. That's the return on the investment of the program, if you will. If we were to spend that money on advertising dollars, that's essentially what we gain by having the media outlets cover our program. which is equated to over 14 million impressions. That's how many eyeballs have seen our message and advocating for pedestrian safety. In the same time frame, we were out at 132 different presentations and events, which is a lot considering we're still kind of in this hybrid COVID phase. But we reached about 12,000 people and distributed about 13,000 materials. Next slide, please. And so we did some things, like I said, we put our data online. So with this group, I really want to kind of dive into some of that data that we were able to kind of comb through. The year's worth of spreadsheets that we've had kind of in the back end of the program, we were able to kind of bring to light and look at some data trends over what our data that we're collecting is really telling us. So here's a map that kind of shows you where all the crosswalks that we monitored last year only were located. And then here's some of the data that we've been able to kind of culminate over the entire program. And I really want to point this out because I think this kind of speaks to additional questions that we might ask and maybe additional data that we can collect in the program. So the first is the total number of lanes. So when you look at the driver yield rate over the total number of lanes, you see that some of these larger facilities actually have increased yield rates. And we assume that that's because there are more enhanced crosswalk measures that are at these larger facilities that helps alert the driver that pedestrians are there. And then also allows pedestrians to use things like RFBs to essentially tell the driver that they want to cross the road. But again, we're kind of diving into more of this, and I'll talk more specifically about this in a minute. I want to transition to school distance. So one of the things that was kind of stark difference for us is that within a quarter mile of a school, we actually have lower yield rates than outside of a quarter mile of a school. And it is worth noting that when we go out and do data collection, we do not interfere with the school crossing guard. So oftentimes we either do it before school starts or after kind of that rush after the school crossing guard leaves. So it just might go to show that we still need to do a better job of educating some of our drivers within school areas that, you know, people still need to cross the road regardless if there's someone assisting them to cross, like a school crossing guard. So we're going to dive into a little bit of that, and I'd love this group's feedback on this data point as well. And then the third one is something that we kind of already know, but it's just great to be able to put this into kind of a metric that when you have the presence of an RFB, it actually almost doubles the yield rate along with the education and enforcement component that comes to the program. So now that we're able to collect some of this data and analyze it this way, we're trying to look at when certain countermeasures are installed and how that does affect that driver yield rate over time. Next slide, please. So I want to give you some concrete examples, pun intended. So at Dover Plum and San Remo Road, Osceola County in April of 2021 installed a stop bar. They moved some flex stakes around and changed the location of a a cross street stopping location to actually overall increase the safety for pedestrians at this location. One of the things we realize is that drivers, as they approach the crosswalk, often don't realize where they need to stop their vehicle. So by adding a stop bar, we're able to kind of give the drivers that opportunity to see that infrastructure. And because of that addition and those little changes, very inexpensive, the driver yield rate increased 19 points. So it went from 50% to 69% immediately. And then what we did also see in some other data that we collect is the distance that drivers actually yield to pedestrians, whether that's greater than 30 feet or less than 30 feet. Usually that less than 30 feet is that evasive maneuver that driver's like, oh crap, there's a person there that's trying to cross the road. So they stop pretty quickly. By adding the stop bar, we actually saw an increase from 61% to 88% of drivers actually stopping further back, making it much more comfortable and somewhat enjoyable for pedestrians to use that facility. Next slide, please. So moving over to Orange County, they installed rectangular rapid flashing beacons and a pedestrian refuge island on North Pine Hills Road over by Evans High School. And that actually saw an immediate improvement of 35% once that was installed and they were operational. And overall, the program, this crosswalk has actually been in the Best Foot Forward program since 2014, I apologize, and it's seen a 56% driver yield rate improvement since the additions to the RFB and all the enforcement that has been conducted. So I'm very happy to see that. We are continuing to monitor several crosswalks on Pine Hills as the safety improvements hopefully kick off. We have some really great before data, and we hope to capture that after data to show what works and hopefully it all works, and maybe hopefully what doesn't and how we can improve that. Next slide, please. But last but not least, City of Orlando, I've got to give them props for Michigan Ave and Cayman Way. So they went in and added, again, a stop bar and some additional signage that had immediate results, again, of about 16% increase in that driver yield rate. But overall, the crosswalk's been in the program since 2012. And with these little changes over time, the crosswalk yield rate has actually increased almost 60% since its inception. So now more drivers are aware people are trying to cross the road. That community has provided feedback that they do feel comfortable crossing the road now. It's not as daunting. There's still work to be done. I know the City of Orlando has other plans for this crosswalk, this intersection, but at least these are little incremental changes and strides we're making to make it safer for people to use these facilities. Next slide, please. So I'll switch gears into education. Like I said, we went out and tried to touch about 12,000 people, give out a whole bunch of materials. This doesn't include helmets that we fit or other trail or bicycle related materials. We only count pedestrian stuff in the Best Foot Forward program, but we do go out and hand out additional information throughout. And then we did that at over 132 events last year. Next slide, please. We also, not though it necessarily important for the program, we do realize that we do have a lot of community engagement on social media. So we still try to keep that community engaged. We almost totaled 600 posts, about 6,000 engagements, with about 330,000 impressions, likes, comments, shares received on social media. Next slide, please. And then we conducted those 3 high visibility crosswalk enforcements with our law enforcement agency partners. We did this in November, March, and July of this past fiscal year with a total, like I said, of well over 700 warnings and citations. Next slide, please. These are just some photos. The next 3 slides are photos of our partners. So this is Osceola County, this is Orange County, and Seminole County. So thank you to all of our law enforcement partners for participating. It is incredibly important. You can continue through to the next slide after this important. There we go. Thank you, Sarah. So progress to date. So we've, this is since the program's inception in 2012. So we've handed out or educated about 11,000 drivers and completed 563 enforcement details. That's the number of enforcements per crosswalk. And then we've monitored total in the program 251 crosswalks and have completed 681 presentations and events to date. Next slide, please. And so this is just a good image of all of the community partners that are involved with the Best Foot Forward pedestrian safety program, all of the law enforcement and municipal partners, along with the health departments and school boards. I also have to give a shout out to Orlando Health that comes out and provides safety information for injury prevention, and all of the other smaller nonprofits that we work with to make this happen. Next slide, please. And then, of course, what can you do to assist us? And really, that's share the message. Tell people that we have to watch out for the most vulnerable road users, but not even. Just be a good citizen, be a good neighbor, and let the person at the crosswalk go before you roll into it. And as designers and people that are in this field, think of those people first. Oftentimes we kind of think of them secondary, and it shows. So what we can do to help, just let us know, and the information we can provide. Of course, I am happy to talk about this topic to anyone who's willing to listen. So if you would love for me to come out and talk to your commission, I've even gone out to public works departments and provided a separate presentation from this, but just to engage them and show how important their work is. But I'm happy to come out and talk to anyone who is interested in pedestrian pedestrian safety. And of course, get involved with Bike Walk and Best Foot Forward as best you can. And for the partners on this call, try to attend those enforcement operations. They are very eye-opening. I know a lot of partners on here have and have been kind of astonished at what they've seen. Our next enforcement operation is February 22nd and 23rd. For those that are part of those steering committees, you should have received those invites already. And we are getting ready to figure out what the schedule is going to be, working with those law enforcement partners, some more to come, and we will certainly share that with MetroPlan Orlando once that's finalized. But that concludes my presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Hannah. As a avid walker and runner, I appreciate the work you're doing. It's amazing how many close calls you have when you're out on the streets walking. Does anyone else have any questions or comments for Ms. Hannah? Please use the raise hand button and unmute yourself when called. I don't see any. Thank you so much for your presentation.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Okay, that concludes today's presentations. We will now hear public comments on what we normally call action items, but in this format will be our items for review and or discussion. Do we have people who want to speak to any of these items? If so, please use the raise hand function found at the bottom of your screen, or by pressing *9 on your phone keypad. When we call your name, the host will unmute your microphone. You will see a button pop up that says the host wants to unmute you. Accept that prompt to activate your microphone. We ask that you provide your name and address for the record. Please hold your comments to 2 minutes or less. Are there any comments at this time?
Madam Chair, we have Joanne Canellis on the attendee side wanting to make a comment.
Okay. Ms. Canellis?
Yeah, I'm Joanne Canellis, and my address is 324 Claymore Avenue, Lake Mary, Florida, 32746. Yes, you need to have the bus stop over here at the corner of the Country Club Road and Estella Road, right by the park, so that I don't have to walk so far. And you need to have the bus stop there over at the Oviedo Boulevard, right by the Thank you. Yeah, do you hear me still?
You're cutting out a little bit.
Yeah, somebody put the muting on there. I'm sorry. Can you hear me now?
We do.
Yeah, I like to have the, like I said, I like to have the bus stop there at the Country Club Road and Estella Road. That's by the park here next to our duplex. And I like to have the, we call it bus stop over at the Oviedo Boulevard by the Kahuna Pool at the Oviedo Aquatic Center, Fitness Center, Oviedo Aquatic Center. That's, you know where that is too. And we need to have the bus stop over at the, by the Mary Prep School too, so that I don't get hurt when I'm walking. Please, thank you. And we need to train over at the Deerland and International Airport too. And we need 24 hours bus and train service, including holidays and nighttime and okay, weekends, so that no one will be stranded. Yeah, going to and from the destination and back home again. Please, thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Ms. Canellis. Are there any written comments that were submitted before the meeting?
No, there were not, Madam Chairwoman.
So we have 2 items for review and or discussion today. Our first will be the review of the December 3rd, 2021 meeting minutes. It's in your tab 1. I hope you have all had a chance to review them. Are there any corrections or revisions that need to be brought to staff's attention? Renzo?
Thank you. Just a quick note on the quorum and representatives at the December meeting. I'm shown as being absent. Actually, I was represented, so I'd like to change that A to an R or an excused absence, please. Mr. Sanders represented me very well.
Okay, thank you. We will have that taken care of. Are there any other comments or corrections? Okay. As a reminder, these will be brought back for formal approval at a future in-person meeting. Renzo, do you have another comment?
No, ma'am.
No, okay, thank you. Our second agenda item review is the annual review of the FDOT performance measures and links transit asset management targets. Mr. Nick Lepp from Metropolitan Orlando will present the information. Please hold your questions on this action item until the presentation is finished. Go ahead, Mr. Lepp.
Thank you. Good morning again. Next slide, please. Annually, we need to go back and resupport or readopt our federal performance measures and our partners' transit performance measures every year for the department to submit those to FHWA for their annual monitoring. This all started back in 2018, part of MAP 21, the federal legislation, where we had to add a performance-based planning component to our prioritization and assess those against performance measures and targets to show an assessment or significant progress towards reaching those targets. Next slide, please. There's 2 ways of target setting within Florida. We can support the Department of Transportation's targets on the federal performance measures, and they will provide all of the data and backup and submit those to FHWA for us. Or we could set our own targets. And in doing so, we would need to do the data and analysis to submit those to the department in time for them to submit them to FHWA. We have chosen in the past to support the Department of Transportation's targets as they are aligned with a lot of ours. Next slide, please. So the first one is our PM1, which is safety, which measures the number of fatalities, the rate of fatalities, the number and the rate of serious injuries, as well as the number and the rate of non-motorized serious injuries. Next slide, please. Since 2018, we have supported the department's Vision Zero target for this, meaning 0 fatalities and 0 serious injuries are our target when identifying priorities through the performance-based planning. Next slide, please. Performance measure 2, which is the target on bridge and pavement condition. The department has done an excellent job of over many years maintaining our system. So we support their targets in doing so for both bridge and pavement. We've had they've taken the money off the top since the beginning, and we have been known as Florida to be a very well maintained, and also it's kind of reflected in probably the new recent federal legislation, as some of those bridge funds have coming to Florida are much less than other states. Next slide, please. Travel time reliability is now our new measure of congestion. Instead of using volume to capacity ratio, we're identifying areas or supporting the federal target of identifying areas of travel time reliability. And you've heard me use this term in the past of reliably congested, meaning I-4 is congested, but it is congested during those same periods, peak periods of the day, every day. So it is reliably congested. The areas that are unreliable are the ones that we are starting to prioritize and identify through this performance measuring target. Next slide, please. Within the transit asset management, supporting links as our partner to making sure that they have the correct assets to maintain that public transportation system. We also have a component within our TMA funding where Lynx has been using those to expand the system with bus purchases. Next slide, please. And transit safety, which is a little bit different than our Vision Zero, though supporting Vision Zero approach for fatalities, Lynx has a 0 target. But when it comes to injuries, they measure things a little bit different than we do. As a trip and fall on a sidewalk is counted as an injury for Lynx, they establish their target under a little bit more realistic historical approach, which is why there's actually a value within there for injuries. Next slide, please. Now, these are all the federal performance measures that we need to annually support every year. The data behind this is within your backup information, which comes from the Department of Transportation over the past year. And then we are going to be updating our tracking the trends information and coming back to you in the April timeframe so you can start seeing the progress in our performances of the system before we start going into that prioritization. So with that, I'm asking for support or any discussion, but I'm here to answer any questions.
Okay. Renzo?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Question for Mr. Lepp. On the accidents and fatalities, do you have a breakdown by county?
We can,
statistics?
Sure, we can get that to you. We're actually compiling that all right now through our tracking the trends. So we should have that all available by segment and by county in the next month or so.
Any chance that we might have that a little bit sooner?
I can see where we're at with that. Let me check with the team and I can get back to you later on this afternoon and give you a more definitive deadline on just the safety number performance measures, but we're collecting it for all 27. So yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Ms. Hardwick?
Hello. One quick note and then a comment on the performance measures. I just noticed that the links in transit performance measures reference accidents, and I would suggest changing that to either crashes or incidents if that involves slip and falls, just to be in line with where Target Zero, driving down fatalities, and how our language impacts our mindset, and that these are preventable incidents or crashes. And I challenge you all as well to shift your language that there's not an accident on our roads, that these are preventable. Otherwise, we wouldn't have set our target at 0. So with that, I wanted to provide a comment on the performance measure 1 for safety. FHWA's review said that Florida is making progress towards most of those, except for the fatalities. Not only are we not making progress towards our goal of 0, we are getting further from it, especially in the past couple of years since the pandemic. And so I just want to say that it's not our votes on the prioritization that we talked about earlier, it's our everyday decisions that take the space away from our vulnerable users and give it towards vehicles, that we need to be persistent in making sure that our roads are safe for our most vulnerable users. This happens every day. That we need to consider the time it takes for someone to cross the street to get to the bus stop, that we need to consider the best way to slow vehicles so that if a mistake occurs, it does not take someone's life. And that involves making sure our communities are at the table for these decisions. This past week, I was at the Florida Pedestrian Bicycle Strategic Safety Plan Coalition. That's a big mouthful. And I think I was one of the only people from our district at that coalition. And really what the coalition is doing is trying to take that section of vulnerable users from the Strategic Highway Safety Plan and figure out task by task, how do we get to that 0? So I wanted to share that and challenge you all to work harder. You've got a job to do to get towards that goal of 0. And if you have any questions on that coalition, reach out to me and maybe we can get you plugged in as well. People at the coalition from statewide were asking about what happened to our BPAC, and I shared with them about the vulnerable user working group and where we're going with that. So I hope that that group can really take on and fill that void from shifting BPAC around. So wanted to make sure no one missed that very important text in those performance measures that say we are making progress towards 4, but we are getting much further away from our goal of 0 fatalities.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other comments or questions? Okay, seeing no raised hands. Thank you, Nick.
You.
Okay, so there are no TAC only presentations. There are several items under General Information tab 3 in your agenda packets that might interest you. Our next TAC meeting will be on February 25th, 2022. As mentioned earlier, Metro Plan Orlando staff will advise us as to the format that meeting for that meeting within the next couple of weeks. The next Metro Plan Orlando board meeting will be on February 9th and will be an in-person meeting. Members of the public may also attend in person or continue to join the meeting virtually on Zoom. Are there any other committee members who have other business to discuss? Please use raise hands function if you have any comments. I'm not seeing any raised hands. Remy?
Yeah, I just want to make sure that I had a technical issue to join as a member in the beginning, but I didn't hear my name in the beginning. So I just want to make sure that you see my representation, or I mean presentation. I mean, I'm sorry. I mean, I'm at 10. That's what I'm trying to say.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Lisa will make note of that. Thank you.
Okay, no problem. Thank you so much.
Anyone else? No. If any members of the public wish to comment, please use the raise hand function and you will be recognized, or dial *9 on your phone keypad. We'll unmute you. After you are recognized, please state your name and address for the record and limit your comments to 2 minutes with us. Are there any additional public comments?
Madam Chair, there's no raised hands on the attendees side.
Okay. Are there any written comments or phone comments that were submitted before the meeting?
No, there were not.
Okay. At this time, if there is no further business, we stand adjourned. Thank you.